I thank you for praying for her. This is the second time since 2002 she's missed a luncheon. So she said, I'm going to be there no matter if I got to crawl. But today, she was hurting with this weather and a flu bug trying to jump on her at the same time. So keep praying for my wife. I appreciate that. As you pray for her and pray for us. So I wanted to say something, Kathy. I really appreciate Kathy's singing. I really do. And we need to pray for Kathy and Ken. Her mothers will be moved down here from Ohio, and that's another big chore, just to take care of her mother in her later years. A change for her mother and a change for Kathy. Pray for them because it's so important. And then I also want to just mention here that a little different thought. One of my lady volunteers for 13 years at the jail, passed away at 2 o'clock yesterday morning. She called me a week ago today and says, Ken, I'm getting rid of my cold. I'll be out there and help you the first of the week. Now she's gone on to heaven. That's a real loss to a lot of people. And she is the best volunteer I ever had. She loved the girls like they were her own kids. And so you just pray the funeral at 11 o'clock on Turning Point on Saturday morning. But I talked to so many people. Isn't it wonderful we have heaven waiting for us? Just think if we didn't have heaven, it could be pretty lonely around here. So we're preparing for heaven and as we pray for the people in the marketplace. Okay, I want to get our speaker up here speaking. I really appreciate Michael Fleming. When I first knew him, he had a bigger name than he's got now, I thought. Brigadier General or something. You're in top of the National Guard here in town.
Not quite.
Not quite, right?
Pretty close.
So he's been part of our life. It's part of us starting the ministry. On our steering committee. I appreciate his sweetheart wife. She takes care of him. Okay. Brother Michael Fleming, come up and share with us what God lays on your heart. Let's welcome Brother Fleming. Trying to get the thing in here.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Ken. It's tremendous. As Ken said, I've been fortunate enough to be involved with marketplace ministry pretty much from when it started. I see a lot of friends in here. As Ken said, my last military position, I was Assistant Adjutant General for the Florida Army National Guard. I was not the top person, but I was pretty close to the top and enjoyed the time that was able to spend here in St. Augustine, and then retired in 2010 and worked for Deutsche Bank for about 4 years, and now I'm at Jacksonville University. So it's great to see everyone here today. First, let me thank Ken for all of his great leadership. We've been very blessed as a community when Norma and Ken moved here. They had a vision for something happening for Christ, and Ken and Norma have been tremendous. And so, Ken, thank you so much for all you do for us. And when Ken asks you to speak, he doesn't even tell you what he wants you to talk about. So, but what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit about the military. Even though I've been out about a little over 5 years, I still stay very connected to that. And then also, really, I think end up challenging you to see what you can do in your life. The call to serve in the military is unique. We don't work for the military. We are the military. General Creighton Abrams said it best: people are not in the Army, they are the Army. Just as the pastor of a church answers the call of God to serve in the ministry, so do Americans answer the call of patriotism by serving their country in uniform. The men and women of our country have all volunteered to serve during a time of war, and multiple wars. And then we all saw just at the end of December, we're still losing warriors. We lost 6 warriors on a patrol in Afghanistan. When the Lord asked the prophet Isaiah, "Whom shall I send who will go with us, go for us?" Isaiah said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." When our nation called, the men and women of the military said, "Here I am, send me." The sacrifice of military service is certainly not limited to the military member alone. Our military families give of themselves to enable their family member to serve. It takes a unique American family to raise a soldier, sailor, Marine, Coast Guardsman, or airman. We must always have families who instill a sense of patriotism and selfless service in their children for our nation to remain free. Leadership and integrity matter in the military. Leaders must have a high personal commitment to ethical standards. It does not matter if you are the most brilliant tactician in military history. If you do not conduct yourself personally and professionally, you will not be in the military. We have a culture of morality and professionalism in the military. The Army has specific values that we have. It's loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. These personal values that are demanded by the Army are very similar to what God tells us to do. And we're very fortunate to have a leader like Dr. Joyner who's going to be talking about servant leadership. But one of the things is servant leadership. It says, "Whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave." It talks about loyalty. "For I delight in loyalty rather than sacrifice, in the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings." The Bible also calls on us to have humility. "Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, let each of you regard one another as more important than himself." Integrity. "He who walks in integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will be found out." And also perseverance. "Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we shall reap if we do not grow weary." I've been blessed to be a general officer in the Army, a managing director at Deutsche Bank, and now a senior officer at Jacksonville University. It is a humbling and challenging in each one of those positions. When I was in the military, it was important that I wear my rank on my rank on the shoulders, and my soldiers would know who the leader was. But God has placed each one of you in a unique position in your business, your community, your family, and your church. Only you can be the example of Christ for those in your life. You may think that your business or job does not have a culture that allows you to witness in any way, but individuals and organizations can certainly change cultures. I remember many, many years ago when I was at Parris Islands in boot camp, and the only time they weren't yelling at us, they actually let people who smoked go downstairs and smoke. And I thought, I'll just take up smoking because they won't yell at me when I'm down there. And that was in the mid-'70s. And then now in the military, and while there's still certainly people who smoke and there's nothing illegal about it, the culture of the military has completely changed because smoking is pretty much not something anyone does in the military. Many people do. You also look in the military about drinking. When I joined the Marine Corps, I've never really drank. People thought there was something wrong with me. As a Marine, not drinking just didn't add up. And now in the military, while certainly they're drinking socially, if you get a DUI, your military career is over. So cultures change. The military has changed over time. And you can have that effect in your organization or in your life or in your community. It really matters where God puts you. God placed me in a position of general officers in which my decisions affected the lives of soldiers and their families. I was humbled by that responsibility. I constantly ask myself, am I making a difference in the job God has given me? While I could not give a sermon to my soldiers, I wanted to ensure that my life and my leadership reflected my Christian beliefs. It was said that Leo Roston said these words. He said, "I cannot believe that the purpose of life is to be happy. I think the purpose of life is to be useful, to be responsible, to be compassionate. It is, above all else, to matter, to count, to stand for something, to have made some difference that you lived at all." What did I do in the military to demonstrate my faith? First, I think it's the way I conducted myself. I don't drink or smoke, and that way I remember what I do all the time. There was one occasion I chose not to pay for liquor when I was part of a corporate outing, and one of my bosses was very upset with me that I publicly stated that. I found ways to convey my faith by praying for leaders as they departed for Iraq and Afghanistan. I sent personal notes to soldiers. I also looked for opportunities outside the military to share my faith. And along with Ken and Hugo, I was very fortunate to be involved with the booklet that's on your table that I'll mention in a minute. So I was very fortunate in the military to see what it was I want to give my faith, and then that way I could remain faithful to God. As in the process of retiring, from the military, I really didn't know what I would do. And so Leanne and I prayed a lot about it, and I started going through some interviews. And I remember the first time I went for an interview, and I've always, since probably the early 80s, have worn a cross on my lapel of my suit. And I started thinking about whether I should do that, because Deutsche Bank is a global organization, and how would that look? Is the first time they meet somebody, he's got a cross, maybe they don't want me. And I just made a decision. I said, I'm either all in or I'm not all in. And I made that decision, and I never regret it. Even if I had not gotten the job at Deutsche Bank, I still would have remained faithful to what I believe God had me to do. I was fortunate with Deutsche Bank, and they took a big chance on me. I was managing director, I was in charge of their site up in Jacksonville, and I truly enjoyed that. And what I want to also continue to give back, one of the things that I always do is I wear a bracelet from one of our soldiers that we lost in November 2004, Specialist Robert Wise. His mother gave me the bracelet and asked me to wear it, and I've worn it ever since, and that's almost 12 years. Leanne sometimes asks me how long I'm going to wear it, and I'm just going to wear it the rest of my life because I feel very fortunate, a military member, particularly a senior military member, I want to make sure I continue to give back. And so one of the things when I was in Deutsche Bank, I started something called the Jacksonville Military Veterans Coalition. It helps veterans get jobs. So I've been very fortunate. God has put me in positions that I would be able to influence things. One of the things Leanne and I laugh about, once you become a general, people actually listen to what you say. And I thought I said some pretty smart things as a captain or a major, but nobody really listened. Now I have to actually be careful what I say because people actually listen to me. I'm the Chief Government, Military, and Community Relations Officer at Jacksonville University. I work for President Tim Cost, and he is a man of faith, and we talk about it often. I'm very fortunate to work for him. He encourages me to not only do good for the university, but do good for the community, do good for Arlington. We've been fortunate. I have a young man by the name of Clayton Leggins, who's also a young man of faith. We reached out to Impact Church. We have a great relationship. It's a primarily African-American church in the Arlington area. We also have an faith council in Arlington. We reached out to them, and we're creating things like Faith Day at athletic events at Jacksonville University. I've also led the establishment of something called the Northeast Florida Military Veterans College Network, which helps military families, both the military members and military families, go to college. So I've been very blessed that God has been able to put me in positions to do things. And what I do is try to keep my mind open to what God could do. And ideas I have, which most of them hopefully end up being good, God has to put them there. I am simply not that smart. But that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I'd like now to talk a little bit about the booklet. Because one of the things that Hugo and Ken and I, when we were first talking about it, is we wanted to look to see and encourage marketplace ministry. And you being here, you obviously already believe that there's a place for your Christian witness in your workplace, in school, wherever you are in your clubs. And so we wanted to do something that actually laid out the legal case for that. We've been fortunate, and you'll see in there's a couple of organizations that did the research. We did a little bit of original writing in there, not much, but what we wanted to do is strengthen the case for Christians to do things, particularly in the workplace. Because you look at during the week, except for the weeks maybe you're on vacation, perhaps 60 to 70% of your time is in the workplace. And you hear sometimes there's a separation of church and state, which in fact is not in the Constitution. And what we want to do is strengthen your case for that. My favorite book in the Bible is the book of Esther. And if you recall, Esther the Jews were going to be killed, and her uncle Mordecai came to her as the queen and asked her to go before the king. And she said, well, if the king hasn't called for me, and he doesn't raise his scepter when I go into his court, I could be killed. And Mordecai said, were you not put at this place for a time such as this? And each of us has been put by God as a time such as this, because you're the only one in your particular area that could really be of influence. I could go give a speech and be nice, but they don't know who I am. Well, on a day-to-day basis, you can have the biggest impact in your area. And if you look through this, what we've done is we've laid it out for you in many different ways. And we based it on a couple of tenets, and you see at the beginning, as Christians, we should always do our best because we are ultimately working for the Lord. First thing is, when you're in your workplace, and this can apply in school also, is Does this person do a good job? I don't think you'd have a very strong case for witnessing if you're the worst employee in your organization. Right. If you're constantly late, if they know you take things home, you don't take it serious, you don't work hard. Now, work does not have to dominate your life. That doesn't have to be the most important thing. But when you are at work, people look at you and observe what you're doing, and they want to know, does that person do a good job? So the first thing we should do is that. As Christians, we should also respect and obey whoever's in authority. I mean, if you don't like your job or don't really agree with what the boss is doing, then you need to find a different job. I mean, obviously, forgetting legal questions, but that's something also, is to be supportive of that. All of us don't necessarily agree with our boss all the time, but when you go out of a room, then you have to be supportive of the boss. And the other one is, as Christians, we should also always go out of our way to be kind and friendly to others. That's something also very important. We specifically, I remember conversations Ken and Hugo and I had. He says, we're not using this as a hammer. We're not giving them some other book. You go to work and beat somebody over the head with this. So you need to worship Christ. What you want to use this as a shield, not a hammer, because it shields you from the I'll call it, just be kind, I call it misinformation that some people want to say, that you cannot have a Bible on your desk. You cannot base something on Christ. You cannot talk about Christ in the workplace. It's simply not true. When you look at this, if you look to the table of contents, it's got Hugo, the first part, the prayer evangelism in the workplace. Hugo Morales wrote that, really tremendous. And then the other chapters are specifically based, and it asks a lot of different questions and answers those questions. It's certainly not Mike Fleming's opinion. When we coordinated this, we took this directly off American Center for Law and Justice, some of the other organizations that, in fact, have done the research. Because if you just look in Chapter 2, here's some of the questions. Can I share the gospel with coworkers at work? Can I keep my Bible or other religious items at my desk? Is my employer permitted to restrict what I say when I'm not at work? And it has many different things here for it. And we have a section in there for government employees. And government employees have a lot of rights also. When I was in the military, obviously I had to wear the uniform the way the regulations were. But when I was in civilian clothes or certainly interacting with people, I still had my religious free speech. And then also you have things here, for those of you who are employers, there's religious beliefs, things you can do for your faith and express it. For instance, training can be based on biblical values. If you're teaching, let's say you're talking about honesty in the workplace or something like that, it's perfectly legal to use the Bible as a reference or to base it on that. And we also have an area in here for Christian rights in the schools. We really feel like that's important. We are so blessed to have Dr. Joe Joyner as a leader here. He is obviously, first off, he is a tremendous leader. When we have the number one school district in the whole state, I think God's blessing us because of Dr. Joe Joyner, and we're very blessed with that. And we hold, most of you know, we hold monthly, I can't attend as many, but we hold monthly prayer meetings in his office. And he just said, this is who I am. So there's a lot that we can do, not only from if you're teachers, but also students. So we wanted to give you that, and then have other copies if you want to take it to other people. But I'd like to close with a quote. Is my favorite quote from Teddy Roosevelt, and it's called "The Man in the Arena." It says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotion, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the least knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while doing greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." People in this room are the men and women in the arena. You've chosen to be in the arena, and God has put you there for a reason. I ask that you remain open to what God wants to give to others through you, and then we can also all reflect what Christ wants us to be. Thank you very much.
I felt so strongly today that I mentioned to Kim we need to get these on our tables. You don't do any good in a box or a trunk. At the time that this was written, as you notice, you don't see General Fleming's name in here. Judge Alex Christini, these two fellows put this book together. He's one of our judges now. And he said, we don't want our name recognized. We want Jesus recognized by what we're saying and doing. Isn't that important?
Amen.
People are watching our behavior, our walk more than our talk. We can talk is cheap. But the people watch us, and they are we walking the Christian walk? And I appreciate what you shared. It's powerful. You kind of get me on the conviction if I walk in the walk sometimes. Sometimes you get discouraged and defeated. You know, I'm looking around. I do have Pastor Strickland. Why don't you come up here? I would like you to close in prayer.
Receive the
You got something on?
We
Prayer
gotta get
request.
prayer requests.
Prayer requests. Okay.